Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. From the dev server comes another set of leaks for the future of War Thunder. Now remember, when it comes to the dev server leaks, this is more about things that may not come this update, but more down the line. You may remember the Iran-Iraq War one from last time, and also a few other vehicles that actually ended up turning up in this update from the last dev server of the previous update. So when it comes to these leaks, just expect them in the future instead of right for this update. There's a lot of interesting vehicles here, but mainly the more interesting thing is the mechanics, including some SEAD testing, which is going on. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe, and let's get started. The first vehicle is the Su-30SM. Now, this is once again part of the Su-27 family. We obviously have a few variants in the game, but the Su-33, which is coming in, is based off the Su-27, the Su-34 is based off the Su-27, and the Su-30 is also a further development of the Su-27. The SM variant of it is a very much modernized variant compared to a few others. The earlier Su-30s kind of fell prey to a lot of issues that the Soviets had in the 1990s. So, the obvious economic downturn is probably the nicest way of saying it, where the USSR collapsed. Therefore, everything kind of fell apart, and a lot of projects had to be put on hold. But by the time 10, 20 years passed, the Su-30 had a bunch of variants, and the SM was then kind of turning up. It was announced in 2011, so this is a pretty modern aircraft, and the general idea is it is a competitor to the F-15E, where it has a lot of similar weapon systems. It can be a strike aircraft, it can be a air defense fighter, it can pretty much do what it wants depending on what you decide to put on it. It has air-to-air ordnance, air-to-surface, guided ordnance, unguided ordnance, it has pretty much everything, and the major thing, at least for me, is the radar on it is quite good. The N011M BARS radar has a detection range of 400 kilometers and also a search range of around 200, so you're not getting away from this thing, is basically the point of it. Also, tails were involved in part of the hood control system for it, which I think is kind of interesting. And another thing about just the Su-30 series in general is this is a vehicle that is used by a lot of different countries, meaning that it could come to several different tech trees in the game. Russia is not the only ones that use a variant of the Su-30. Vietnam is one, so maybe you could have one for China. You also have India, which has a few too, so they could definitely turn up. But it's very much an Su-27 with access to some of the standard weapons. I don't know if this specific variant would be able to use R-77s, but since it's the upgraded variant, I'd be very surprised if it doesn't. It might even use R-77-1s, which of course are the more modern ones, which people have been asking for. And of course, stuff like the R-73s and R-27s would turn up as well. So yeah, it would be very modern. It would be pretty good in the game, and one of the last, I suppose, major modifications of the Su-27 family. It seems like they're also trying out some new gameplay mechanics in the game. There's a strategic bombing and oil refinery on the Golan Heights map playtest, so they're obviously giving a go at seeing what it's like to have actual proper objectives in the game instead of just random howitzers or random radar stations, and also SEAD on the Vietnam map playtest, so sticking a bunch of radars around the place and also radar systems to see if the good old SEAD setup works. Now, if you don't know what SEAD is, it's the suppression of enemy air defense, so basically stuff like strikes, harms, things like that. Missiles which are designed to home in on radar signatures, large radar signatures generally, without the pilot having to worry about it. And SEAD missions became kind of popular, I suppose, in Vietnam. The F-105, I believe it was. Was it the F-105 or the F-4? I believe it was the F-105 started doing these, but unfortunately, even though it was successful, they lost a lot of the F-105s. Obviously nowadays it's become a lot better at dealing with, and of course, as we've talked about many times, this is just an ongoing issue with War Thunder, the battle between CAS and AA, where CAS is definitely winning. So they're testing out some different ideas, probably more for aerialistic and air arcade, especially since they've added the more detailed models, even more animations to a lot of those radars in this update to make them kind of look better. And on top of this, you have the Iran-Iraq war stuff, which is still coming. We also have another dreadnought battleship for the British. This is the HMS Thunderer, which is an Orion-class dreadnought battleship. This one was actually put together and commissioned before the First World War, and then eventually decommissioned afterwards. Wasn't one of those machines that actually was used in the Second World War. Instead, in the 20s, was kind of broken up. Now, this vehicle is similar to a lot of the other ones we have in the game. It had access to 5 twin 13.5-inch guns, a bunch of single 4-inch guns, and also some torpedoes too, with about 300 millimeters of belt armor on it. So nothing too new compared to what's around in the game, and generally it would be nice to see it. This feels much more like an event vehicle, or much more like a kind of battle pass vehicle, than one that they're just going to stick in the tech tree, since there's already quite a lot of vehicles like this at 6763 and, well, even 70. The next vehicle is a South African HVM SPAA, but there is no specifics about it. You may remember in the leaks there was the G6 HVM, which is the Rhino, but instead of the Rhino turret, it has this weird turret with a radar attached to it, with a bunch of missiles attached to it too, very similar to something you'll see on the Strela. Also, there is the Roycat HVM, which seems to have kind of a similar setup, but that vehicle never really existed in that way. It was more like a mock-up instead of something that went on. Now, I've had a look into this missile, and I've actually asked Black Ivy about it, who is a guy who, you know, I've chatted to a lot about these South African things, and to be honest, there's so much interesting information about this missile. I kind of want to do like an individual video about it. It's the SAHV missile, and it's basically an FU missile, is probably the way to put it. It's a missile which, depending on the mode that you use, it can do whatever you want it. It can be IR, it can be AR, it can be passive radar, it can be active, and also at the same time it can just be generally guided too. The SAM itself is a mixture of the Crowtail with the IR seeker of the Data anti-air missile. So it's just so weird at the end of the day. Now, you have several versions of this. Obviously, the SAHV IR. This one's a ground-launched variant. But then also you have the SAHV IR, which is a missile in a container, and the 3, which is the one that supposedly was mounted on this. And this was an LOSBR laser/RF guidance type. One of the things about this missile is it was supposed to do something similar to what the Brimstone does, where you fire it into an area and then it has a lock-on after launch capability, so it will guide into the target by itself, which obviously feels very good to use, and that isn't just like an IR missile, it's also a radar guidance missile too. So depending on which one they decide to go for, this could be really powerful. Its max range is around about 15 kilometers, its max speed is Mach 3.5, and it should be active radar guided, so you don't really have to worry too much about it hitting the target. This would be quite a large step up compared to other stuff that we've seen. There's also some decorators that have been leaked. A Baba Yaga decorator, which is that weird Halloween thing where it's like the house with the legs which runs around. Very odd and very weird. We've seen it a few times on Halloween when it comes to War Thunder. It kind of like takes the place of the vehicles that wander past the hangar, and instead it's just the house with the legs which turns up and goes around. Also the Nutcracker decorator, which I'm guessing is more to do with the play instead of an actual Nutcracker, or that Nutcracker, if you know what I mean. So there might be a bunch of different things that could be, but my guess is probably something to do with the ballet. Let's be a bit nice on the cultural side of things. Not everything has to be grotesque, but some things definitely do. Then the other two leaks, that are sat there confirm what the Chinese GigaChad leaked, which is the EFVP1 and also the MB151C1. So it looks like two leakers have hugged and come together and decided that is true. These are obviously the winter event vehicles that have been talked about. There's also a few other winter event vehicles that have turned up, one which is in the files right now, which we'll be covering too. That is all of the leaks. If you have any thoughts, I would really like to hear about that SU30SM, to be honest, if anybody has any information on it or any thoughts. Well, look after yourselves. Peace be with you. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.